So, we'll introduce the speakers now, and to start, I will introduce our sponsor for tonight, Erlanga. Erlanga Bonawan is the co-owner and CEO of Laflo, a furniture company listed on the IDX that owns Laflo and Pita, which is where we're at right now. Erlanga believes that design in everyday life can transform human behavior and culture. His goal is to be the most trustworthy in the market and integrate Christian narratives into the design. Please welcome Erlanga. Our second guest for tonight is George Hendrata. George is the CEO of Ticket.com. He led the transformation of Ticket.com to democratize travel and be the most loved travel and lifestyle platform. George specializes in starting greenfield companies, divisions, and turn around restructuring situations. Graduated valedictorian with a Bachelor's of Science degree from Columbia University and an MBA from the Harvard Business School. In his spare time, he enjoys being involved in impactful social enterprises. Please welcome George. Sorry, I missed the suit memo for tonight, guys. I didn't know that's going to be the dress code, but they are very sharply dressed in anime, right? And last but not least, we have Christine Kam. Christine is a biomedical engineer, soap maker, and nature lover. Sensing God's calling to full-time missions, she started Cigar Naturals in 2018 as a learning project in order to use business as her identity in a creative access country. 6 years later, the project is a full-fledged business that continues to seek ways to share the gospel to the underprivileged, and God continues to provide in spectacular ways. Please welcome Christine. All right, how are you guys feeling? Nervous? Chill. Hopefully this will be more of an open, chill conversation, and will be a great blessing for everyone coming today. So, okay, to start, guys, maybe we give a bit of an intro about you and your business. We can talk a bit more about the work that you do and also your company, right? And Anga, we can start with you, we can go to George, and then Christine. I think, Anga, for you have a slide, right, that you want to display?
Hello everyone, thank you for coming. So we at Laflo and Pita, our business is in furniture import. Laflo is catering from the European brands and Pita is the Asian brands. So in our business, supply chain is very important. And in the lens of this topic about crisis, what I can reflect is, yes, we as a group, we are so blessed. I'll show you the blessing. So in 2019, when COVID hit China, we never thought it could be so severe. So business as usual, 2020, we made an alliance with our competitors to cross out to each other. And COVID hit Indonesia. Italy locked down, all our competitors don't have enough inventories. But thanks to our alliance, we have extra inventories, and that year we beat the last year performance. And in 2021, I and my wife, we delivered our first daughter in Singapore because of COVID. And then I encountered a Chinese brand that I knew from 2018 was carried by a famous Italian dealers at Ion. So I thought, I told my partner, I think if it was not us to bring this brand, somebody else will definitely take this brand. And then in 2021, we started Pita. And just to, for you to know, basically Cambridge came from China. So we opened a new route of supply chain. And nobody knows that Russia and Ukraine war actually broke out at the last of 2021. So most of all the Italian brands, the price increased like crazy because of the supply chain. Even BMW cannot deliver their electric vehicle because all the raw material came from Ukraine. And thanks to the Chinese brands, we are not like instructed. And even we gain a lot of new market share. And then some of our clients ask us that, hey, can you bring some brands from the US and from the Australia? And then we built that network also. and then we established a good relationship. And then on my way back last September from the US, the Israel and the Palestine, basically Israel declared war. And on the 11th December 2022, there was a commercial cargo was shot in the Suez Canal. And what happened? Oh, actually, in my slide should be there is like a line to it. So now, if you see the Strait of Gibraltar, usually we take the route of Suez Canal down to Bab el Mandab for the European brands. And now we have to take them all over Africa. And that's all the competitors are now have the biggest challenge. So thanks to all the China route, which do not be affected for now, and also the American and the Australian straits, we can survive. So lessons learned that first is we have to pray. As a modern human, we have a tendency to solve all our problems with our logic. But unfortunately, crises happen beyond our expectation. I think we and our partners, we are Christian. We always pray that God, please just be with us in every step of our way. Because to be blessed is better than to be smart. None of us actually predicted all the crises, but God has planned all our solutions before the crisis happened. And second is we learn to know our portion and not to be greedy. I think that's the guiding principles. So the Agora Alliance with our competitors created because there was Fendi that came to us to represent their brand in Indonesia. And I called like my competitor, hey, your brand contacted us. Why don't we just collaborate and do this brand together? So we have a value that we don't want to disturb or like hit somebody else's business. So that's number two. The third one that I can share is basically we have to bring all the glory back to Christ. We learn to see crisis, whatever happened in the world from God's perspective. So our decision is not fluctuative and it is not circumstantial. And we can see like the first reaction is basically when crisis happen. Lord, what and how do you want to glorify your name through us in these moments? So I think nobody got cut during COVID. Even we give extra benefits to all our employees with vitamins and everything, but we also share to them the reason why we do that. We did that because our Father in heaven is never calculative to us. And so we will not be calculative to you guys. So I think all crises would have solution, would have resolution. But if we don't bring that back to God, then we would get the glory. And I think God is indeed the one who gives the resolution and deserves all the glory back to Him. Thank you.
There we go. Okay, thanks for that. Riveting, George.
So, Ika.com, if you're familiar with the logo, there's a yellow in the middle. And we're in the business of bringing happiness to people by democratizing travel. Like recently, we did an online travel week, and we sell tickets to Singapore. One-way ticket is 200,000. Going to Thailand is 800K. Going to Japan is 1.8K. This is how we bring happiness to people. And making it easy for people to search, book, and pay. And so now we cover almost all the countries, 200 countries, 150 airlines, 3.6 million accommodations, so hotels, and also during COVID, people tend to avoid places where they see a lot of people. And And so people start exploring villas. And for Airbnb, they have trouble getting inbound tourists because of the restrictions. So we took those villas and we created a business for them and launched the Home. And so that 36.6 million properties include those type of villas as well. And then at the same time, we have attractions. So we sell unsold tickets, Taman Safari, and so forth. And again, during COVID, those are all closed. And so I was sharing with, the super cool man was here. So I was sharing with him that at the time we pivot a little bit to online experience. And since Indonesians really love horror, so we have an influencer who do live streaming of going to haunted house. And actually people want to buy tickets. We have 100,000 of people concurrent, and they pay about 100K, so $6. And so we do that. So we kind of default to online experience. And so people scream while they watch the haunted house, not on the roller coaster because the playgrounds are closed. And so we get lucky there. And again, I have to echo what Angga said. There are a lot of things unplanned during the COVID, and somehow some of the business grew 5x, 10x, and so forth. And we attribute it to His blessing. There's nothing else that we can say. And so we thought that the business would go to zero, but turned out that it didn't go to zero. We thought that we had to lay off people, but turned out we didn't have to lay off people. We just have to repurpose them. There are a lot of problems with people trying to cancel the tickets, trying to do refunds. And to our surprise, a lot of people come in and volunteer to become customer service agent to answer call because they want to make sure that customers are not confused. And so prior to pandemic, we were the fastest growing online travel in the world. And then obviously pandemic, revenue almost goes to zero. But after pandemic again, everything seems to recover, and in many cases, the performance is beyond pre-COVID. So we were truly grateful and blessed because of that. So I think that's a short intro for me.
George, I have a very important question for you. If I work for Ticket.com, do I get special employee discounts on my ticket to Japan?
Of course.
There you go, guys. If you're looking for a new gig and looking to travel in your future, you know where to apply. Are you guys hiring now?
Of course.
Of course, from the CEO himself. Okay. All right, Christine, over to you.
Hi everyone, so as Steve shared earlier, Sagara was not started as a business. It was my personal learning project. That's why I'm a solo founder. I didn't think it was going to keep going on 6 years after. But the fact that it's still there is a testament to God's divine provision, and I need that part of the journey. I think at the beginning, revenue was quite easy. We were, I think, the first locally in the market to sell shampoo bars, and that sort of coincided with the rise of eco-friendly lifestyle in Indonesia, so our sales actually hit through the roof. We had trouble fulfilling orders. But then the pandemic hit, and our sales was slashed by about 50%, while production costs increased by another 50%. So by the end of 2022, our cash reserve was 30% of our 2019 level. So I went to God and said, you know, God, this is not making any sense for all the time I'm putting into the business. There's just no way to do this. And so if we were to keep going, I need you to tell me that it's you who's going to do it. So, so I joined RG in 2022. And with RG, you're supposed to come up with this global action plan. The middle of the word is action. My global action plan ended up being not doing much at all. So I committed to just not doing much and waiting on God to tell me whether or not to continue. Right? So I told God I'm going to dedicate 2023 to just pray and wait on you. But I'm a psalmist, right? So I told God I need you to make it really, really clear. What that means is I need you to confirm two things. This is very demanding of God, right? I need to confirm two things. I need Sagara to be profitable somehow, and I need a co-founder with a sales and marketing head on his shoulders, because I'm not a sales and marketing person, I'm an operations person. My background is engineering. Um, so I told God that, not knowing what He will deliver, right? So come 2023, I told God I really want to decide by mid-June, although I'm going to give the whole year to deciding, but I really would like to know by mid-June because I need to make plans. Those plans being that I really want to take a sabbatical. I'm tired of working, I really need a break, and I have never had a long break ever since I was born, I think. I never took a gap year, I never took sabbatical. And so June 2023, I remember the end of June 2023, I have told my closest friends, hey, I look at my numbers, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever, so I'm gonna close. I called my HR, told her the news and how we are going to cascade information, made all the plans. 2 weeks later, I was working out the nerve to tell my key people. And then I think it was that very same weekend, I received a random call from someone in Medan randomly saying that he wants us to produce 1,000 pieces of shampoo bar for him. And this is like, if you look at my website, there's nowhere there that says we're gonna produce for you, we're a contract manufacturer. There's nothing that says that. If you look at our SEO, nothing that says that. So I don't know where we got the idea from, but we got the order. But then that wasn't enough. So I told God, you're gonna have to keep this going because it's not enough reason for you to keep going with the cost that's involved. Sorry, I have a cough. But that turned out to be like one of the first of about 5 orders that came that year. Culminating in October, there was an order for 15,000 soap bars. And that practically saved our year, right? So that brought us into profitability. But then me being a Thomas and low on faith, I looked at my numbers again in December and said, God, it's not making sense still. So what are you going to do? I took the time to travel to the Middle East that year, worked out all my valuations, met up with a friend who had experience selling her company and tried to learn from her. And I had made up my mind. Okay, I'm going to sell. I was convinced that my heart was in the right place. I was asking God, you understand, right? I'm tired. I'm sick of this. I'm tired of being solo founder and going everything alone. I really would like a break. So I had a buyer lined up, and I was in final negotiations with them, but then the deal actually fell through. Right? And so I was very disappointed. But then March, another call came. It was in kindness, multiple members of mine, and said, look, we're gonna just, pass up some of our clients to you because there are things that we just can't do and you guys are doing it, just natural soap bars. And then the first order, we're still in RFP process right now, but it's order for another 5,000 soap bars. Right, so that's a significant amount for us. But I think throughout this process, I keep saying, okay, the first order we got, that's like 1 data point. That doesn't really mean much. The second order we got, that's 2 data points. That's a line. That doesn't really make a pattern. So I can't really keep saying, I'll keep going because you're telling me to go. My Thomas head is saying, God, that's not enough still. So I still have a lot to learn to say, okay, God, I don't know what's going to happen in the next month, but as long as you keep opening doors and windows and even ventilation holes, I'm going to keep going, and that's known enough for me. I think the other thing also is throughout this whole process, especially in the last year, I've had to ask my team members to go the extra 5 miles, right? For them to even be okay with hiring people of low skills, even though it's really challenging for them to do their daily work already, even if we have to incur loss because of the learning curve, but to still be faithful on that because that's what the company is for, partly. And for a founder to be okay with that being the bottom line, what kind of an impact are we giving to people who otherwise may not have that opportunity? So yeah, being learning as a founder also to always rely on God and share to my team members why we are doing the things that we're doing in the way that we're doing things.
Awesome. Christine, maybe a quick follow-up to what you just said. So you're a solo female founder, and I want to talk a bit more about how that has contributed to your experience. I've been in VC now for about a couple weeks. I think I've met over 20 companies, and maybe like 10% of them are female founders. So definitely underrepresented, and I'm sure I've heard stories of a lot of pushback when you choose to go down this path. So can you talk about that experience real quick?
In my experience, in my environment, it hasn't been that much of an issue. Probably because of my training, I just tend to see it as a challenge and keep going. A lot of the founders I know are actually also females, so community plays a big part in it. Knowing that there are people who have gone through it, and I think the challenge is how to position myself not just as a boss, but also a mentor, a nurturer, and someone that my team members can go to even for personal issues. And again, to allow for mistakes, allow for doubts and questions, and having the feel can use it as a platform for growth.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I hope that can be encouragement for any female entrepreneurs or aspiring female entrepreneurs in the room and beyond. So, I want to talk a bit more now about how you apply your faith in the day-to-day management of your company. How does it affect how you do business transactions, but also how does it impact how you manage people and do human resources? Maybe Anga, you can start on this one.
I think in the midst of, we've been serving religious families in Asia and looking at our size and then going to George's house, going to Bram's house, you feel insecure, right? Wow, we are small. But what I learned and I also share to all my team is this: just be faithful. Do what your portion is, as best as you can. When David, before he went to the war, his job is a shepherd. Tend to the sheep, feed the sheep. But when the lion came, when the bear came, he has this courage to even hold the bear of the lion and beat the lion. So we have to submit in God's plan. We can be a small company today, or 9 years, much smaller than this, and we can arrive until today. It is not actually our merit. It is just we faithfully deliver what our clients pay to us. We deliver. Because sometimes you get a big amount of money, and then you see a lot of opportunities, and you want to be the number one in market share, then you overstretch your demand, right? So I think honesty and just be really know your portion. And when the time of God comes, David was just called by God to go to the war, and then can say to the Philistine, "You are cursing not Israel, but you are cursing God." So I think our motivation is to be pure. We do this is to glorify God, and we do as best as we can, as honest as we can. People do not only appreciate smart people, people appreciate more honest people. And I think as team is here. So I cannot say lie to you. All the money stewardship and everything is on us. That's what we can do.
Awesome, thank you. George? Everyone clap every time the sponsor says something, okay? You might get discounted furniture, who knows?
Cool story again. So, I think I want to just begin by telling you how excited I am to be here today, seeing all of you. And for me, it's refreshing to meet Super Cool Ben, because it's been a while since I met someone who was just born again 6 months ago, and you can feel the excitement, right? You have all been there before, but it is super fresh, and you're like I would equate my own born again story. It's like a kid in a candy store. Whatever you ask, he gives the next day. But after a while, obviously you need to build some resilience because you become more mature. And so for me, in any circumstances, that rings true. The verse, Philippians 4:6-7, just don't be anxious about anything, but in everything through prayer and petition, and let the peace of the Lord transcend beyond all understanding. Because that's what it is. We don't know what's going to happen to us tomorrow, but somehow you feel that it's going to be okay. So it's almost like watching a movie and you already know the end of the movie. And I think that kind of peace serves to guide you. Because everyone is looking for you to lead. And actually as a leader, it's also not okay to not knowing the direction. But in many cases, we don't know the direction. But if within us we know that in the end it will work out well, as also promised in the Romans 8:28, then we have the confidence to just go one step at a time, set our goal according to his goal, and then you will be able to see that the path suddenly opened up. And I was sharing to end my turnaround story where I felt like I was trying to turn around this company for 8 months. It's losing money month by month. Had issues with my personal life and everything breaks apart. But someone prayed for me and gave me the Bible. I came from a Catholic family. And then somehow I was so hungry that I cannot read anything else. I read just the Bible. And to everyone that I met, I want to share the good news. Sometimes I also don't know what it is. It's just that I landed up on South and started reading South, and it was at a park where David had so many issues. And his mourning, his prayer in the South calmed me down. And then before you know it, things that take 6 months to turn becomes 1 month. And things that normally takes 1 month becomes weeks. And I don't have a good explanation for it other than just surrender, like what Christine mentioned. Taking it like a little kid, you cannot rationalize it, and then just let him guide you. Right? So I think that's I guess my simplest and my only answer.
I think for me, I always try my best, and I fail most of the time, but I try my best to make God the center of everything I do. And I would say that Sagara is founded for sharing the gospel, right? But the center of that is really worship and our relationship with God. Without that, nothing else matters. Right? But I try to make worship the center of every single decision that I make. And I think one of the things that I have really learned from my non-action global plan is to just slow down and wait for God. I think for me, especially living in a city like Jakarta, where it's really noisy, everything you have to move. Walking is not necessarily fast, but everything else you have to be fast. I connect with God the most through nature, and I don't get any of that here, so it's really hard for me to listen and hear God. But learning, even in my daily life in Jakarta, to slow down and wait on God and be more sensitive to the still small voice of the Holy Spirit really help to guide in the things that I need to do, even when there's too many unknowns to solve the equation, right? In math, you can only have so many unknowns and so many equations in order to solve the issue. But oftentimes, when we talk about uncertainties and troubles, there's not enough information for us to exactly know what to do. And that's where God comes in. That's where we have to just take the posture of on our knees and pray and really say, God, I have no idea what I'm doing. You have to take all of this and just do whatever you do. And be okay with it, knowing that our life is in His hands. He is sovereign over it all. And whether or not we make the right decision or the wrong decision, whether or not we are successful or we fail at this certain thing, it doesn't take away God's love from our lives. I think that's really important to know and to hold on to as a leader.
George, you run a really big company. It's easy to foster a godly culture when your company is small. You have the capacity to really pay attention to everyone's needs and well-being. But then, of course, as you get bigger, it gets harder. Things need to be more structured. You get more pressure from clients and investors. You have to make a lot of tough decisions to be able to keep the company scalable. So how's your journey been in handling this?
So you're right. I mean, the bigger it is, it's harder to steer the ship. So in investment, if you have a bigger pool of money, it's hard to generate bigger returns. In companies, typically, once you start getting bigger, it's hard to get everyone aligned, and you might become less agile. And so the values that we have in Ticket is called happy. So keep hungry, the H, and then A for agility, because in startup, you're supposed to disrupt. And so things change really quickly, and you need to be agile. And then the P is people-oriented, but also another P, which is performance-oriented. And then Y is you have to be you, because at the end, you are uniquely you. And so you bring the positive into the company, right? So you just think of it like a circular of 7 people who report to you, or in extension, maybe your peers, right? And if you do that well, actually people who are in touch with you, they will also pay it forward. They will also do the same thing. And then that's the way you transcend value from one to the next. Actually similar to what we do in Life Group, right? So life on life, right? So you live the life the way you live it. And then you transfer it to someone else. And then they can see it. They can see the light and they follow the light. So that's what I practice. So it doesn't matter whether it's a $10 million company or $100 billion company or a billion. In the end, it will be the same 7 to 8 people who basically you lead. And if you continue in that path, then you can manage a bigger size equally well as a smaller size.
Awesome, thank you. On Christine and Nuki, is there anything to add on that? How do you manage the culture as you scale?
For me, I really believe on blessings. I think as a believer, there are a lot of immeasurable riches. So we rather keep good people, honest people, kind people, rather than smart, but broke. Because I always tell my partner, look at Apostol, the owner of this building. Look at the other entrepreneurs that who are very smart, very sophisticated in this investment, this, that, turn around, this, that, but at the end of the day, went broke. Right? Cheat people, cheat people's money and everything. Look at him. Lives very peacefully. Money chased after him, not him like after the money. Right? So I think if we have people, I believe that God will bless this team. So we have the value of ABCD. Ability, believability, you have to be honest. If you are wrong, you just say it's fine. And you have to care, and you have to be independent. So the BCD, as long as you are BCD, even though you are like the performance is less, we will keep. Yeah, but yeah, we need the people.
So, sorry, I didn't bring you guys up this next question, but it just came up because I was just discussing this with Anne yesterday. I think in leading companies in a feature-driven manner, there's always this tension between discipline and grace. So when you think about being driven and and you believe in God, right? You believe in grace, right? But then there's going to be times when you do need to discipline non-performing, problematic employees. So how do you balance the two?
It's really hard because I would say that's a case-by-case basis. At Sagada, we always say, look, we don't need you to have a high degree because we do hire low-skilled, low-education people. But you've got to be honest. You've got to be willing to learn and able to learn. You've got to be willing to work and able to work. So I believe that as long as they have those 5 characters, they can learn and they can grow and they can level up their skill, which is exactly where we want them to be. So I would say in Sagada, we always say, look, we're giving you an opportunity that you may not be getting elsewhere, but you also have responsibility. We pay you, that's our responsibility, but you also have your own responsibility to your own performance. You are to take initiative to learn and ask people to teach you or learn on your own. Right now it's 2024, you can Google, everyone has a cell phone and a smartphone and internet. You can't tell me that you didn't do your prior research. So you can't come to me and say, this is the problem, what do I do? Do the express step. Learn on your own first, and then come to me if you still can't find a solution. But we also do regular feedbacks. So we don't wait until they're an absolute failure for us to let them go. They'll give you a chance that you floundered it, and so now bye-bye. We will give them all the benefits of the doubt and give them all the opportunities to learn and prove themselves that they can be better than yesterday. They are allowed mistakes. I always say, we're all human beings. We make mistakes. That's only human. But for you to do a mistake over and over again, that means either you can't learn or you don't want to learn. And so if you can't learn, ask for other people to teach you and help you through it. But if you don't want to learn, we can't really help you with that. You need to search deep within yourselves and just to really also encourage this change in their mindset. I think that's for me.
I don't know if Andre or George is anything. Okay, it's not this. George has anything to add.
So I think for me, I probably personally let go maybe close to 1,000 people. Some for fraud, and then again, some for non-performance, like what you mentioned. I think we still need to do those kind of stuff because like it or not, companies also made to serve stakeholders, and one of them is profitability. But the main difference prior to being born again and after is that I know that everyone is made in the image of God. And so I cannot say that this person is not useful or this person is a junk, for example, because in this life, no one is a junk, right? Everyone is in his image. And so I think I still have to do those kind of stuff, but the way that I do it is very different. Because then you have to touch from the heart, and then you have to think from the person's point of view. Meaning, for example, maybe the person just wants to quit for some time already because the job doesn't fit him, or the target is simply too high. And by you approaching first and bringing conversation where you kind of become like a career counselor, trying to figure out, what you're passionate at, what you're good at, what you are less good at, and try to figure out the next place for him to be. And so that conversation become more about a career counseling and a placement rather than letting go. And in the end, I still keep in touch with all of them. And in many cases, some of them learn and they want to come back and work for the company again when the company has bigger avenues and other areas that fits the person. So in the end, we still have to do those things. But being in Christ, the way you do it and the way you think about it and the way you approach it is different. On that.
I think first when we see problems, I always heard complaints from my managers about this stuff, that stuff. And as a leader, I think we have a lot in our minds. But it is our job actually to convey our direction in a very simple and clear way. So I always ask us to reflect ourselves first before we discipline our team. Whether we put him or her in the right place according to his or her ability. Are we delivering our message clear enough? And maybe we are the problem, we create confusion. And third is basically all our managers and all the senior staff, they have the job, the KPI to coach the subordinates. Say the performance problem, then the question is, are you coaching them enough? If yes, so we can execute. But integrity is mostly the case that we cannot tolerate. When you steal money, and we have these integrity pacts together with our partners. If you are married, if I am married, we cannot cheat on our spouse also. Then once it happens, we cannot sit in our position, including me. Right? So because we believe that blessings comes to the table. I think that's what it is.
Thanks. Thanks for sharing that. I want to make sure to address a specific segment of the room. So, all three of you are at the top management / founders of your current companies, right? But I see some people in the audience here right now who might not be in that position. Maybe they're more middle management, maybe they manage others, but ultimately they're managed by their managers, who are managed by their managers, who are managed by the top management of the company, right? And this segment of people might think, I don't have the authority to practice a faith-driven culture because I ultimately have to answer to my bosses. So for those people who might not be a founder or CEO here, what advice would you give to them?
I can do the most experience. Maybe I share. I never studied abroad. I don't have enough money to go to MBA, so my school is basically the Bible. It happened to Daniel. Daniel, who is Daniel? Daniel cannot change the king at that time. But we believe the boss of our manager is God. Even our president-elect or whoever, sovereign in any nation. So what we can do is just be faithful in our portion. And even if somebody wants to doom Daniel for praying to God rather than to the king, actually, at the very edge of the story, God can flip it. So we have to believe that He is alive. He is alive. We cannot discount that reality. We cannot just solve all our issues with our logic. We can be praised.
So I think I come back to super cool then. sharing of 6 months ago morning. You don't have to know much. When God touches your heart, you don't have to know much. Just like what Anga said, you know that He's alive, and just by that fact, when you share to others, it's very different. You don't have to. You're not expected to build a million buildings because God created the earth in 7 days. Right? So if you want a million, He wants a million buildings. He can just make a million buildings just with a snap of the finger. So He wants you to touch people because of your position. You're uniquely you. So only you can touch them. So I don't think you have to go as far as thinking, how do I touch everyone can help me? But just go by whoever that you touch, just share your story. So that's one. Second is that, again, with the Bible, right? One thing is believing that you have to read the Bible, from the first page until the end. But I think it's more important that the Bible somehow, even one page of the Bible touches you, rather than going through the whole pages and nothing touches you. So it's less about quantity, but more about the quality of the interaction. I think that's what matters most. And God knows that you only have 2 hands, 2 feet and 1 hand. He knows what you're capable of. You need to sleep. You cannot, wake up 24/7. So there's a limited of interaction that you can do. It's already designed. And so just do that, with what you have. And he can do great things with what you have.
I think God, like George said, has placed us where we are meant to be, right? Just at the right place, in the right time. And no matter how high our position is, or we don't have a position, maybe, there are still people in our lives that we can influence for the kingdom. And I think we all need to start thinking that way. Whether we're leaders or you're an employer or employee or you're just starting out, even you're not working yet, you're a student, you still have a circle of influence that can impact through the gospel. And I think it's important to remember who God is as our identity and who we are as people who are created in God's image. So Jesus himself, he only has the 12 disciples, one of whom betrayed him. So his success is 11 out of 12, right? Even during his crucifixion, everyone ran. So, what was the measure of his impact? It wasn't until the Holy Spirit came and empowered us all. And I think that's the key to whatever we want to do, is to allow the Holy Spirit to come in us and to work through us so that we can share the gospel and help anyone who is interacting with us. So like George said also, it's quality over quantity. Jesus fed 5,000 people, but only 12 who followed him.
Awesome. Want to clap? We have to get to the Q&A section now, but with that last question, I just wanted to say a quick thing. So I'm not the CEO of my company right now, but what somebody once told me was I'm accountable to my boss, who's accountable to his boss, who's accountable to the CEO, who's accountable to investors, who's driven by the market. So really, nobody has ultimate control over what drives the business. It just kind of trickles down and places stuff out accordingly. Second of all, you want to be a leader in a pretty tough environment, hang in there. There are people with similar experiences who can relate and hopefully will encourage one another. And I guess with this panel tonight, one thing I wanted to say was there are faith-driven companies out there driven by faith-driven founders and CEOs. So in whatever time that you have in the current company, do your best to be faithful, and then if it's the right time or season of life where you seek out these faith-driven companies and founders, and maybe consider joining them and get your discounts for both furniture and plane tickets. And so, yeah, something to consider. Okay, so we're gonna go to the Q&A session now. We have the Mentimeter with a couple questions submitted, but before that, we'd just like to open to the floor first if anyone want to ask a question live. Going once, going twice. Okay. Then we'll go to Mentimeter first, and let's see if that can help start things up. Okay. Ooh, this one's interesting. How much is creating wealth your choice or your will, and how much of it is God's? Good job, whoever asked this one. How much is creating wealth your choice or your will, and how much of it is God's?
Elaborate on that. Like, I don't know. How much of it is your will? Like, if it was not in God's will, how much of that is your choice of making? Like, oh, I want to create wealth, almost like generationally. How much of that is like, I have to make that commitment, and how much of that is unique to God? So, I think of that question like, you have two farmers, right? It's very dry, and it's waiting for rain. But one farmer, plant the seeds. The other one doesn't prepare the land and doesn't plant the seed. So maybe the one who planted the seed, believing that rain will come down anyway, will probably get more lucky. But I don't know how many percent is gonna be from the person or from God. But I think, if you prepare, many times I get a goal, and if the goal is within my ability, typically, okay, I'll just do it. But if it's so much bigger than my ability, then I start to get scared. Because I don't have the resource, right? And I typically pray about it, and then when it still come up, okay, you gotta do it. And then normally it comes in a dream, normally. Or intuition, or I should try to go this route, that route. But the steps are normally never complete. It's only first step. And then because it's so big, first step, and then once you step one, and then the next step, show up. And so I think, I don't know how many percent it is, but I know that part of it is you believing in faith that He will provide you the way. And so it happens. But some people may not take the leap of faith and do it because it's too big. And so it never happens. So I don't know the proportion, but for me it's always like that. I have to take the first step loudly, rather than not taking at all, and then nothing happens.
I think I totally agree with George, and just to add, 100% to his thoughts. Because without God's sovereignty, as much as we can do, if He doesn't want us to have that, maybe we can be a rogue person when we have that money. Then God will never allow it. So I think everybody wants to be rich. I want to be rich. I want to bring my family to all over the world and everything. But I think before even we have that, we have to prepare ourselves to receive His blessings. Which is, I think, we need to discipline our heart not to be greedy. I think it's very important before we become rich. We should not love money. And we should be able to also know money is about wealth is basically just stewardship. It is not even ours, right? So we also have to know what are the God's missions that we want to continue if we have the money, things like that. I think preparing all the infrastructures before we really receive the blessings. But if not, then that's our portion.
I think for for me, it comes back to the heart mentality. What is the driver for you or us going to create wealth? Is it to bless others, to honor God, or is it only for our own benefit and satisfaction and pride? Because if it's the latter, then it's probably not a good heart motive, and it's not in line with God's theology of grace and love. And the way that you would go about fulfilling that dream of wealth will reflect your heart motive. I would say in my experience, this also happened in 2022. I was doing my ego one morning in Hawaii, of all places, and I heard this voice that asked me if I were still doing everything that I was doing for God's glory, or is it now just for my own pride? If he were to ask me to give it all up, would I say yes? Or would I just keep going? Because I feel like, oh, Sonara hasn't really grown up to where it could be. I'm just going to keep pushing through. So I think, obviously, now I know that the question would not mean that God must fulfill Sonara. 2 instances already where he gave a huge order just when I said I'm going to stop. But that is really God showing me that He wants me to actually give up all my heart desires and my ambitions and let them take control of everything.
I've seen the richest families in Indonesia. Most of them, not all, most. I think the real rich, all of them, they didn't plan to be rich. They never plan to be rich. They always share to me. They just be faithful on the things that they are doing. Just deliver good solution, good values, good deliver whatever entrusted to him. And I see a lot of like wanting to be rich, planning to be rich, trying this round to be rich, but never get there.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Here's another really good one. In a world where people glamorize hustle culture, how can we be content with the portion that God has given to us? Christine, you talked about your gap being resting, so maybe you want to try to answer the question?
I'm an action-oriented person, so being able to just stop, slow down, and wait on God was a huge challenge. I think, I keep saying this over and over again. It goes back to your heart motive here. What is the proportion that God has for us in this season? How do we honor what He has given us, but in the best possible way? Does that mean I have to work harder? Of course not, abandoning time to worship God and fellowship with brothers and sisters in Christ. But what is the most honoring God in this season? And I don't think there's an exact answer to that. It's depending on your case. But I think a lot of times when we say hustle, that requires abandoning our fellowship with God and one another, right? So we have to be careful as to how do we not come across as being lazy and just doing the minimal, but also not abandoning everything else for the sake of success and sense of achievement and acknowledgement from the world. Right? Yeah, I don't know. I think one of my biggest growths professionally was in my last workplace, where I was in a position where I couldn't rely on my technical abilities. It was a job that was technically easy for me, but was challenging in terms of personal relationships that I had to build. So I'm an engineer again, so I've always been able to do technical jobs, right? And I had been able to get away with not having very good personal relationships with people. people because I'm just like target oriented and do stuff. So, and God really rebuked me on that. So my last job, my last corporate job, I sensed that I had to stay because this is where I would be forced to grow in my ability to build relationships with people because that was the job. And that was really grateful for me. But I felt called to stay because I sensed that that's where God was leading me. In terms of hustling and achieving, I would say compared to my other jobs, it's not much, honestly. But in terms of hustling for my personal growth, that was the right job for me at the right time. And so I would always advise, to see where God wants you to grow you, and what is your biggest heart issues.
Georgia, you guys have anything to add?
So, when I see how God created the world, you see that it's very creative. So no one has the same fingernails. I mean, not fingernails, I mean, fingerprints. And all the animals, they're all different shape of plant. And then when he created Adam and Eve, he told Adam to name all the animals and the plant. And we are created in God's image. And so you can see that we are created in His image, so we are creative. And to name all the animals and the plant not easy, right? So meaning that you have the capacity to do it. And so since He is our creator, and He gives us that capacity to do it, then He wants us to use that capacity. So I think the main thing is, understand what you're good at, and then extra level you're good at. Because He wants you to be an overperformer and not an underperformer. And that's the way I see throughout the scripture. And that's how I'm trying to be daily.
But indeed, we live in a very noisy world. I have my mother. I admire her so much. I think she is my and my wife's role model. She is very simple. She doesn't want anything, and she just wants to serve the Lord, and it's her satisfaction. I think down to it, of course, especially when you see like peers same age can achieve so much, then you feel, why am I here? But I think one that comes to my heart is that the creator of this universe are the one who is planning for our life. That's the benefit and the joy of being saved, being believers, that Jesus Himself is the one who is planning our life. Who are we? Because we are just a small particle of the world, but He cares. So that's it.
Amazing. I hope your mom gets to watch this afterwards. You should be really proud. Before we get to the questions in the meter, we'll just check if there's a live question. Okay.
Hi everyone, my name is Angel. Thank you for all the sharing. So I have a follow-up. I actually have a question from the previous answer. So I just started my own company, and I'm in a stage where I am discerning whether which path that I should take, whether I need to do like a fundraising route to the VC money, or like I should just bootstrap, or maybe take some angels money. So I think my point is that, okay, I know that this company is God's company. I know like the purpose of this company is for God's glory. But then, to what extent I want to hustle, right? Or to what extent I want to, maybe if I get more money, then I can bring more impact. But then I don't even know whether like the product actually a lot of people want it. So I'm actually in that stage, and I know that there are, I think it's specific case per case. I would love to hear if you guys have been in that kind of position, and what you think about it. Thank you.
we are actually currently in a negotiation of acquiring an Italian brand. So as a dealer, we always want in this globalization open market, we need our own brand. And Italian brands are very expensive. We don't have the money to buy that. So the question is the same. Raise fund or given what kind of terms? I think there is no one answer, one practical answer, because all contexts are different. If we take a wrong decision, I believe God will redeem it. The only measure that I and my partner contemplate is whether we take this decision, we take this opportunity, is it out of our greed, it is our willing to get an instant way, is it honoring God? So I think that's the hard check. And taking an example of David again, when he was told by the dad that go bring this food to your brothers, the Bible mentioned that David tend to his sheep, then he go to the war. So there are responsibilities, basic responsibilities that we already have before this big or any big opportunity. We have to be faithful first. We cannot, for example, in our case, we have a promise to our shareholders. We have responsibility to give dividends to them. We cannot delay their rights just in order to buy another company. At least that's our contemplation. I don't say that, oh, you have to give dividends first before you acquire the company. No, but in our case, it's been a promise for us to our shareholder. So for us, that's the tending of our sheep before really go to the big war. And having the funding or not, also we need to see the trainings that has been done in our life. David has been facing the lion and the bear before facing the Goliath. I think knowing ourselves, knowing God, and take the courage to take the decision. I think we are all in God's sovereignty.
Yeah, so I agree with that. So I think how I think about expanding or taking a specific business route or not. The one that guides me a lot is, for example, when Moses passed away and Joshua needed to step up, right? And God didn't give the whole territory to himself, to Joshua in one day. He gave little, and then he conquered that territory. And then he gave bigger one, and then he conquered more territory and so forth. And I think the reason that he told Joshua is that you simply don't have the manpower and the ability to conquer that land to manage wealth. And so I think he knows our capability, and he gives us the desire of that. And so if you follow that, then you will not be able to buy more than you can chew. But of course, there are times when, like I mentioned to you in my earlier answers, that the dream seems to be too big, and you become scared because it takes resources beyond what you have today. And every time that I have those kind of vision or dream, I know that it's not coming from me because it's, I simply cannot execute it with what I have. And so typically I take a bit more time, meaning just ascertaining that it is what he wants. So taking a bit longer time, more. If it takes 3 months, you take 3 months. If it takes 6 months, you take 6 months. More often than not, if you take a step in faith, you will open up the puzzle that will lead you to where he wants you to lead. I know it doesn't sound scientific. Obviously, you have done all the scientific analysis with spreadsheet and so forth, and you have option 1, 2, and 3, and 4. But in the end, there is that element where, the insight, the greatest insight, sometimes it doesn't come from all those analysis. It comes from the wisdom that you get from him, come from experience, come from knowing yourself, and then you tend to make the most important decisions that way.
I don't really have anything to add to that. But I think my encouragement to you would be that even in a lot of the unknowns and uncertainties, to let God fill up that gap. In the uncertainties, let Him fill it up with the assurance of His face, of the assurance of His promises, sorry. And in the times of troubles, to let His peace fill you up instead of anxiousness and worries.
There's another interesting one from Antimeter. It's a very simple one. I have low confidence. How do I become a leader?
I have low confidence too. Ross can tell you how much you need to convince me to sit here and talk to you today. If you saw me earlier tonight, I was sitting in the corner because I just needed to calm myself down. I think for me it's just having the confidence in God and His calling in my life, whether it's a specific calling or a general calling, and being faithful in what's on my plate right now. I think a lot of the times there are lies that the world and by extension Satan like to whisper in our ears, quietly or loudly, and those are maybe speaking to other issues that we have. So last year, again, as part of my journey of waiting on God, I've had to address a lot of my own personal demons and childhood trauma, which is not easy. It brought up a lot of pain, and it really highlighted that a lot of my self-confidence issues come from a place that is really deep. And so just going to God and asking God to redeem that. I think a lot of the things about work is also a work of God's redemption, right? And that extends to both our work professionally as well as our work ourselves personally. Because if we're not well, then we can't really listen to others. And so just asking, why am I not confident? Whether it's like I don't have a lot of practice speaking in public. Maybe George and I'm not sure you I do it a lot, but I sit down very myself probably. And George is why I'm so nervous. But yeah, just asking God to give you the strength and the courage.
All right.
He wants to speak through you, He will.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. This one I think is also quite important. How do we navigate through turbulent times and stay faithful to the company when work starts negatively impacting our families? So definitely this is called work-life balance, right? It's something that we try to think about and implement, but it's not always realistic. So how do you navigate through all that?
Actually, I want to add to Christine's comment. So I think in leadership class, you see three different things. In general, normally you try to manage your own performance, and then after that you try to contribute to the team well. How do you contribute to your team well? And then how do you lead your team? And so I think if let's say you don't feel confident today, start by managing your own performance. Because when you manage your own performance, you will become confident because you set out to do certain things, you manage to do it, and you do it well. And then, when you can contribute in a group setting, means that you're not selfish, because not only that you're managing your own performance, you're contributing to other people's success. And when that happens, it's almost natural that the next step, people will look up to you to find answers. So I think that's the steps that I normally implement in the company. In terms of, when people keep ask, how they should structure the training program for leadership, normally I see that in most larger companies who are very structured in their training, will make it fall under the three different categories. And that if you go through that category, you can naturally, from a skill perspective, be able to get there. And naturally, when you have the skill, you will have the confidence. So, okay, work-life balance. So for me, family is first. God is first, and then family second, and then work third. And so then I work in that order. So if I have to sacrifice work because I have to focus on God and family, I will do it. And then I will have him figure out how in my 24/7 I can do more. And in my experience, it has always been that since he created the world in 7 days, he can also make things happen to you like this. So you will not run out of time, you will not run out of energy. And so if it's in his will, he will make it happen. And so if you prioritize that way, anyway, he will make it happen if he wants it to happen.
Just want to add to the previous question. When you are there, be careful to be overconfident. And for confident people, be careful to be overconfident. Moses, when he was first sent by God, actually he said, God, who am I? I should talk to Pharaoh and everything. But at the latest age of his life, he struck the mountain without God asking. And that's what made him cannot go into Canaan. And Joshua take the charge. And I think be careful with success. After so many years of success, we see that power tends to corrupt. And we have to keep ourselves accountable. In our case, we have our board of advisors. Steve Strader is our independent commissioner. So many dreams that I want to do, I cannot do. And I just have to submit to the board. Right? And I think it brings us towards us today also. But families comes first. Communication, if you have spouse, is very important. I know some moments are very busy, but I don't believe it cannot be communicated. When we are first married, we agreed to some degrees, and of course, along the way, there is like always new things, new busyness and everything, but we have to communicate with each other. Like if my spouse cannot take it, then I have to prioritize and the family. And like George said, believe it that God will help you. Because in God's eyes, also family is first.
Okay, this one, I think it's simpler than the other questions, but I think it's important. In your busy schedules, how do you find time to spend with the Lord? And how do you spend time with the Lord?
Less Netflix. I think it's about like committing to a daily routine for me. I'm sticking to it, hopefully no matter what. So whether it's waking up in the morning and shutting down my computer, no matter what I'm doing, but a certain hour at night so that I can spend some time with God. If journaling is full, then spend time journaling. I think when I first started Sagara, I worked 7 days a week, right? So I had to really commit to taking at least one day and do a real Sabbath, spending time with God and people, and making God part of my worship. Again, I feel like with Sagara, God has blessed us so much, and it's all His divine intervention that if I don't spend time with Him, then for sure I know that everything will just fall apart. And it has happened before. So yeah, I think for me the time spent that when I had part of God was when He really had to strike me in the head and say, let's get back to Him.
all becomes about hygiene versus habits. So I think that's the point where I was saying I can't keep going. I should keep going because now it's all about versus habits.
So for me, I try to communicate with him throughout the day. Typically when I have a difficult problem, or maybe a difficult case in front of me, I normally take toilet breaks. And then the toilet break, I kind of like do a little prayer and ask him, okay, what do you want me to do here? Something like that. And by doing it, actually, it keeps the relevance because that's the key, right? I mean, when you are leading, actually it's less about the time that you lead, but it's more about the quality of your decision making. And quality, we don't know the future. You know, we know the past. The one who knows the future is God. And God doesn't want to reveal the whole future all at once because you might get scared and you might turn the other way, right? So that's why you reveal to you little by little. So normally I do that. But in the beginning, I normally do, beginning of the day, I normally say prayer and, pick up a verse, pick up a book or two. And then at night, the same thing. Maybe in the morning, I typically do Psalm and Proverbs. You will rotate over the whole month. 30 in Psalm, right? And then 150 in Psalm and then 30 in Proverbs. And then, or the other way around. And then at night, I do probably do a book of New Testament, basically. And then do the same prayer. But I think keeping it relevant throughout the day for me makes it very real. And he is real, right? And that's why if you have let's say a helper at home, and you never use the helper, then it's actually your mistake, right? And so we have the counselor with us all the time. And so if we take that to us, then he will provide.
Same like that.
Okay. We actually only have 10 minutes left. So want to leave time for each of the speakers to give a closing statement. And also, I'd like to request in the closing statement, maybe also just include one key takeaway that you want everyone here to go with tonight. Anga, can start with you.
God is real. God is real, involves Him in all the ways, and believe in prayer. Ask Him to guide in every step of our way.
So, when I was asked to share in this meetup, not really sure how I can convey this, leading to turbulence and all that, because sometimes the answer seems to be too simple for me, right? Because I rely on Him so much. Rely on His love, rely on His mercy, because everything that I have is from Him. But again, it's very refreshing to, hear someone like, again, super cool Ben today, to share his born again story, because I think all of us need to be refreshed, from time to time. Sometimes we take it for granted that we have Him. But for a not yet believer, a non-believer, who doesn't know the end of the story, it's really great. You can ask Him, you should talk to Him today. Because when you talk to Him, then you know what people are missing when people don't have Him, really. So I think that's it. And I just want to close with Antun, because that's our company culture, also a culture that is encouraged by the Minister of Tourism. So I wish everyone a great spring break. Thank you for all your support in all seasons. Let's take our travel plan for this spring break and ticket.com for all your travel needs in all seasons. Thank you so much.
And Super Cool Ben is low-key our secret for the panelists. It's been featured a lot tonight. Thanks for coming here tonight. Christine.
Sounds sponsored. I think for me to stay faithful in your calling in life, which is first and foremost is to keep your sons and daughters. And if you're not a believer, discover what it means to be his sons and daughters, and to be ready to be surprised by God in the times when you feel like all is lost, there's no hope, or you have no idea what to do. Just surrender and wait on Him. Learn what it means to just slow down and to hear Him speak to the personal life.
All right, thanks. Thanks again, guys, for taking time out of your busy schedule to come tonight. Thank you for the amazing venue. Thank you to the Resource Global team for organizing these talks. I learned a lot from organizing these, and I hope it was a great lesson learning experience for everyone here too. So with that, I'll give it back to Russ.